Audio Jungle.
Welcome everybody with a very fine glass. So if you'd pour your first glass out, that is this bottle here. This is your Brut non-vintage. And on the screen, you can see the details, but the details, the technical details, don't really capture the heart of the wine, which of course is Riccardo and Gualberto's work that goes into this bottle. So let's talk very quickly, and then we'll show you on a map where everything is located, and we'll get into some more of the details. But Riccardo or Gualberto, this is your calling card wine, right? This is the wine that would introduce anyone to the beauty of Franciacorta and your property.
Well, when we talk about the entry wine, you always expect something that is quite simple. I must say that probably this is the first expectation, but you will discover that we like in Franciacorta and in our estate to have wines that have a high complexity, a lot of richness. This is coming from the soil of Franciacorta and the microclimate. And I always try to make my wines looking at this kind of wine. I mean, I want the complexity, not just the pleasure. Pleasure and complexity is better than just having an easy entry, bubbly wine.
Exactly. That's why I call this your calling card wine. This is rather than entry level. I
Yes.
noticed when we marked down about the composition of this wine.
Well, I have to answer. The rooster is mine, but the window is open because of the.
Maybe you were having a chicken dinner.
We have the rooster enjoying the tasting with us.
Nice pairing.
So we've.
I'm in the countryside. I'm a farmer, so.
all of your grapes are organic, and in a little bit later in the presentation, we'll talk about your certification and how unusual that is. But it's. Have you found since you went organic that your wines have changed at all?
Alberto, you want to answer just to share a little bit the stage?
Yes, well, okay. Of course, the organic process is it's a moment that for us started from the vintage 2018, which was the first year we were formally organic certified. That what the law says. Actually, that process has been something that for us has always been in our let's say way of farming, or in our tradition. The organic process has been the end result of a process which started over 30 years ago for our estate. 30 years ago, already my grandfather stopped to use any kind of pesticide in the vineyards. As well as putting attention on everything we were spraying inside our field. So definitely we can say there is a change in what we've been harvesting in the years, because it's always been a practice that we've been carrying through our estate. Of course, this is today something that, as my father was saying, and as you were anticipating, is just a small piece of all the environmental and sustainability attention that we put in our process. We like much more to talk about sustainability and sustainable for our wines much more than organic, because I don't want to anticipate it too much, but as you probably know, organic is just a small piece of what sustainability can be.
Okay. We will talk about your sustainability in a little bit as we move on through the wines. Just a quick note that this wine spent a minimum of 30 months on the lees, which is actually very long for most bottle fermented sparkling wine. So it explains some of the nuance, I think, and the great complexity and depth that we have in this. And also you can feel the great ripeness of your grapes. Let's show everybody where we are bringing our wines from. Let's move on to the map, and we'll show you in Italy where we are. So up in the province in the far north of Lombardy, and just north of Lombardy, of course, you've got the Alps. And in the next map, we'll zoom in a little bit for you and show you the particular location. you see that Franciacorta is just south of Lago di Seo and right near Brescia. Gualberto or Riccardo, do you want to say something about the uniqueness of where you are? Because you're bordered by you have the moderating influence of the lake, you have the moderating influence of the Alps. What can you tell us about this area? And we'll move ahead to the next map as well to kind of give you a little bit of an impression. Here's where we are. What can we say about this area?
Ma sto lavorando, non posso, sono in collegamento con l'America.
So, Gualberto, you want to say something about the area?
Sorry, I just mute. Okay. There we go. Yeah. The area is definitely something pretty unique in terms of characteristics, both of the soil and of the climate. As the map shows, Franciacorta is definitely in the north part of Italy, at the footstep of the Alps. So the mountains are just 100 kilometers north of us. But the fact of being south of this small lake, which is the Lake Iseo, well, we say small. Instead, it's the fourth biggest lake of Italy, but it's a little bit smaller than Garda, Como, and Maggiore. Create a unique mix of climate in the Franciacorta area. We like to describe our climate as a Mediterranean climate, which is a perfect spot for growing the vines, but also the example is that over here, olive oils, copper trees, typical trees of the Mediterranean area can grow easily. So the Franciacorta being on these morainic hills, which are hills that were created by the work of the glacier, which came down from the mountains and has been engraving the valley north of us, the Lake Iseo, and moving land, moving soils up to where we are, has been creating this unique spot, which actually has always been known for sparkling and for wine production.
Beautiful. Mariana, can we move to the next slide, please?
Yeah.
And there we see a lot of the vineyard area.
Nice map.
I drew it myself, I'd like to say.
I'm going to take a shot of this.
So, Gualberto, when we see the green here, these are where you draw grapes from across your region, is that correct?
Well, where you see the glasses, those are our vineyards. The green that you see are, generally speaking, is identifying a little bit the hills of the area. But consider that when we are talking about Franciacorta, we talk about a very small area of the province. So this map is more or less showing you an area which is something about 20 miles going east to west and less than 10 miles going from north to south. So it's definitely a very, very limited spot. It's made from 18 municipalities, which are very small small villages, villages with 10,000 inhabitants, to give you an idea. So it's definitely a very, very small area. So where we are located, which is in the west side of the region, the village where the cellar is Capriolo. It's where also it's the name of the vineyard. It's the one Vignabrolo di Passoni is where the cellar is. But as you see, all of our vineyards are definitely very nearby to us. So it's less than, generally speaking, 10 minutes by tractor to get from the vineyards to the cellar.
Okay. Let's. I noticed that you've got a couple of vineyards that are very, very close by the lake shore, and then you have some that are more inland from the lake. So this gives you some breadth and complexity, I gather, to the type of grapes you can bring in.
Well, generally speaking, you have to consider that the soil is very difficult from one point to another. So what is more important before of the microclimate is what is in the soil. Franciacorta was originated, as Gualberto was saying, during the last 3 glaciations, and the soil is changing every few hundred yards. Just to give you an idea, in this small area, we have over 60 different soil profiles. So wow. For us, it's very important to have vineyards in different places. We are on 3 villages, Capriolo, Adro, and Iseo, because of the soil. Then, of course, the microclimate of the 2 vineyards facing the lake, it's also different. Generally speaking, it's the season is starting earlier because of the water that it's protecting them from the cold of the winter.
Yes. Mariana, if you'll show us the next slide, we can get some images of the region and see just the extraordinary variety. Riccardo, you live in a very beautiful area.
You all should discover it a little bit more, and we are of course waiting for you in Franciacorta. Well, let's start from the top on the left. It's one of the churches that belongs to one of the cloisters that were at the origin of the name of Franciacorta. Then going clockwise, on the right, you have an image of our vineyard, Villa Barcella, facing the lake. So you perfectly see the vineyard, the slope of the hill going down close to the lake. That's a Chardonnay vineyard. On the back side, you can see the lake, and in the middle there is a hill that is just covered a little bit by the fog. That is the biggest island on the Italian lake, on the European lakes. It's called Montisola because it looks like a mountain.
Yes.
Then again, you have a vineyard. You have an image of the wetlands of Le Torbiere del Lago di Seo. It's a turf region. Originally, it was carved for getting turf for the silk industry, and finally it became a wetland. It's protected by the Ramsar Convention for the Wetlands, so it's an international spot for the migrants, water birds, all the birds connected with water, and finally you have another image of the vineyards facing the lake, going in the direction of the lake to the north side.
Beautiful. In the next slide, we see you are very keen, I know, and for many of us who have had a chance to meet you before, it's often been in connection with your role with Federdoc, and you have always had a very strong sense of history when you've made presentations for us here. So you brought two maps today, one showing 1908 and then later in the 90s. What are we seeing in these maps?
Well, going back to my passion for the history, just to give you an idea, Alberto represents the 18th generation of our family farming on this land and also on the other family estate in Emilia-Romagna that is Rontana. So you can imagine that we grow up between a little bit of history. The slide that we are not seeing is showing the research on the soil, what we call the zonation of Franciacorta, that was started in 1992 when I was the president of the consortium, and it ended up in 97. Later on,
we have that one next. So if you want to show that,
yes, that will be next. But I was explaining why. Yes, that's the one. But go back to the other one. Few years ago, while trying to make a little bit of order in all the papers of the family, I discovered this map that was printed in 1908, and this is the research that my grandfather, my grand-grandfather did 1 century before the one I started, for deciding which were the best combination in terms of crafting between the American roots and the European varieties after the phylloxera events. So it was just 20 years after phylloxera arrived in Franciacorta. At that moment, they were already studying how to rebuild or replant with modern techniques, and that's why they were investigating the soil. Give a look a little bit to the map, and then we go to the other one, and you will discover how clever they were in their research even 1 century ago. I mean, for us, it's always amazing to show the two maps together because it's giving an idea of what Franciacorta is. Franciacorta is a stratification of great passion and a lot of research in getting always better and better quality. And we started a long time ago.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the history then, and everybody will come up to your second and third wines in a couple of minutes here. But while you're still enjoying your first wine, Gualberto and Ricardo, do you want to give us an overview of the history? Because it's a fascinating area. I've always been struck by the fact that Italy has probably more DOCs for sparkling wine, or wines that may be sparkling, and yet Franciacorta was the first one to become a DOCG. So set the scene for us a little bit, if you will.
Well, I will talk about the recent history, and maybe I will leave to the older history to my father. The recent history for Franciacorta, I'm more familiar with that. Let's say in this way. The recent history is something which is definitely pretty recent. Most of the denomination in Italy has no more than 50 years of history. Franciacorta was one of the very first created, and as you see, was the Franciacorta at that time was just a DOC, was created in 1967. When the DOC was started, we are talking about only 11 producers in the region. Between those, there was my grandfather, Gualberto. So that's why we do consider ourselves as one of the historical sellers in the region. And there were just about 28 hectares, so something about 70 acres of vineyards in the whole region. Then the growth has been pretty fast. As you said, Franciacorta has been the first classic method to obtain the status of a DOCG in Italy. And at the same time, we also decided to ban the use of the classic method word, and to this end, we decided to call ourselves just Franciacorta. So avoiding any other use of name which can describe the style of what we are. We are just Franciacorta. So no sparkling, no classic method, no spumante, nor method champenoise. Neither of this name. That happened when in 1995 the DOCG was obtained. Of course, in the 90s, the consortium was born. Consortium is celebrating this year the 30 years of its birth. Today, the denomination has been growing up to 120 producers, more or less, and over 18 million bottles produced and sold every year around the world. And as you see on the map on the right, and we'll just go a little bit faster on that. Today, Franciacorta is not just Franciacorta; it's still continuing the tradition of the still wine which were produced in the region. In the past, they were all under the name Franciacorta, but from 1995, they've been divided in different denominations. At the top, you have the Franciacorta as a DOCG, but then you have still wine, which are called Curte Franca. They are on two different levels. They can be single vineyard selection, or they can be just a generic blend of vineyards. And then we also do have an IGT, which is Sebino. Sebino is the ancient Latin name for the Lake Iseo, which also include white and red still wine. We have to say we do produce through the whole range of wines, so we do not produce only Franciacorta. Those, of course, are today the focus, the majority of our production, but we still carry on a wide range of still wine as well.
Fabulous. Let's ask everyone to pour out their second wine, if you haven't already. And this has a very similar label to the first wine. So Franciacorta, but this is Satèn. Now, you've already mentioned, Gualberto and Ricardo, how this is a traditional method wine. So second fermentation in the bottle. A Satèn, though, is a very unusual designation, because to me, the name both refers to the texture of the wine, like the English word satin, and then also it has its own special requirements. Ricardo, can you introduce us to the concept of Satèn while we have
When we talk about Franciacorta, we talk about three different Franciacorta. The Franciacorta with the different dosage, so dosage zero, extra brut, and so on. Then we have the Franciacorta Satèn, and then we have the Franciacorta Rosé. So three typologies and different dosage. Satèn, as you mentioned, is a name that it's typical only of Franciacorta. The name is coming from seta, the silk. In our area, we were producing a lot of silk in the past time. Our vines were growing in rows, hanging to mulberry trees, and the leaves of the mulberry trees were used for feeding the silk box. So we were mostly producing silk and wine. From the silk, you have a perfect description of satin. Think about a scarf. When you touch a scarf, you have the sensation of something that is smooth, but at the same time, it is a very strong cloth. The first parachute were made of silk. So if they were jumping out of a plane under a piece of silk, it should be really strong. That's to say that we can use the two words, smooth and with structure, describing the wine as being a wine that is round, that has a very good structure again. So the aim of a satin, it's always to be a wine that it's showing a lot of character of the soil of Franciacorta, but also the ability of Franciacorta of being the wine for pairing with food and not just the toasting bottle. So the satin has a longer aging period by our rules. By the way, Franciacorta already has the lowest crop in the world, the lowest quantity of wine you can produce from a kilo of grape, and the longest aging period in the bottle. The satin is longer than a normal wine. Our satin is always a vintage, so generally speaking, we do around 48 months aging in the bottle. We do mostly barrel fermentation before the tirage, and finally, it's very dry. The satin is always a brut. For us, it's a brut at 7 grams per liter. That makes 7/4,000, so very low quantity of sugar. And again, the bubbly notes, so the bubbles in the wine are very, very gentle. We have less atmosphere in the bottle, one less compared to the other Franciacorta, so that the bubbles are not covering the wine. So they're bringing the wine to a higher vivacity, we can say, probably, and at the same time without exploding in the mouth. That is something that may happen with a young sparkling wine. So this is the wine to pair with some fish or a white meat, poultry, something like that. We like to think about the Franciacorta Satin as the wine for food. By the way, for Ricci Curbastro, the Satin, it's always a flagship. So it's one of our most well-known wines.
I know that within the regulations for Franciacorta, Satin must be, it's always a Blanc de Blanc, but some producers, you're allowed legally, right, to put in a Pinot Bianco or Pinot Blanc, but you choose to go 100% Chardonnay.
Yes, even if we are a great producers of Pinot Bianco. I mean, in terms of percentage, I have a high percentage of Pinot Bianco in my vineyards. We use Pinot Bianco in many other of blends. For example, the Brut we had before, it was with 30% of Pinot Bianco. The reason for choosing Chardonnay 100% for us, it was getting the complexity of the Chardonnay. If I have to describe Chardonnay versus Pinot Bianco, I would say structure, complexity for Chardonnay, and I would say elegance and light flavors for Pinot Bianco. So the two things are quite different. We prefer to have Chardonnay in the silk to give the richness of the silk in our satin blend.
Yeah. If you compare wines 1 and 2, everyone, if you have the two glasses, the aromatic differences are extraordinary. The Satin is almost like it's a still white wine with bubbles. It's got this herbal character, this great depth of character. And so even though oftentimes wines with lower atmospheric pressure are put forward as being great aperitif wines, I agree with you, Riccardo, that this wine seems to me a real food wine. And you get 40 months on the lees. And so here we have a wine that's 6 years old and just shows beautifully. Luigi, you are the local distributor for Riccardo's wines. So you've got the whole portfolio, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Do you have a preference for among the first two of which ones you like?
He is not allowed to have a preference. Pay attention with questions. Sorry, Luigi, go ahead.
I love both of these wines, and this would be a great opportunity for us to go ahead and to pour the next wine, and then we can give some more of the overall after we've had all three wines. So let's go ahead.
I've been taking away the scene to Luigi. Let him speak.
Lynn?
Yes,
Lynn,
sir.
this is Michael. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I was wondering if you would give us a little time to have maybe a question and answer.
Of course, we will. You can ask a question at any point. If you've got a question now, by all means, go ahead.
Well, first of all, you introduced the first one, which we really liked, as organic. Now, I see now the second one has no organic.
Oh, only
mention.
because I didn't put it on the slide. They're all organic. And
they're all organic.
Even more important.
Okay, just to clarify that. Because you see, we own a wine bar in Fort Lauderdale, and we only sell sustainable and organic products.
What's
So
the
I
name
just wanted to clarify that all the products are organic.
Luigi will be calling you in 25 minutes.
I will better explain, please. We are a sustainable winery. That means that we produce sustainable grapes, sustainable wines, and we all deal as a sustainable in the complexity of the cellar. Since 2017, you can get our sustainability report, the one that has been certified. It's available on the website for the 2017 and 2018. 2019 certification is a little bit late because we have been all over the world a little bit lazy in the last months. I don't know why, but you all remember what happened. And so we will be able probably to get our certification before the end of July. But so we are sustainable winery since vintage 2017. We are organic winery since 4 vintages now, with 3 years before of the conversion. As you know, you need to have a conversion. We have been for 35 years up to now low impact agriculture. So from low impact agriculture, we went into organic and sustainability. That's to say that our wines, for example, this one, 2014, is showing on the label that it's a sustainable winery. I'm not sure if it's already on the bottle of this 2014 because of the American rules on the labels that sometimes are not easy to be followed for us, because I know that we are using the sustainability certification since a few months, so I don't remember this one if it has the print behind sustainable winery, but definitely we are sustainable since 2017. I hope I have been answering.
Yeah, and Michael, we will also, we've got a slide coming up that shows you some of the specifics on that as well. That was just my omission, not putting that on. Now, so let's go ahead, Mariana. We can show the third slide here for wine 3. So I had to put the color. I mean, this is a gorgeous bottle, Riccardo, and a beautiful color of the wine, but I love the presentation. So here we have your rosé. Now, it's often pointed out that most rosés around the world are red wine added to white wine, or sometimes it's with the skin pressing and giving you the juice. How do you make your rosé?
First of all, I have a precise idea about what should be a rosé, and you probably heard me talking about that previously. For me, a rosé, it's a light red. It's not a dirty white. Once stated this important difference, you can understand everything. So we use 80% Pinot Noir on this wine. We do skin contact for a few hours in order to extract the color. but together with the color, we do also tannin extraction. That's why I'm talking about a light red. The 20% of Chardonnay that it's in the blend is just to give the Franciacorta Rosé a little bit more of complexity and flavors, but it is definitely Pinot Noir in terms of what you can pick up in the mouth. For this reason, this wine, it's a brut, and it's a very dry brut. It's around 5 grams per liter, so very, very dry. And I like to imagine this wine on salami and charcuterie, so ham and salami. I like it very much on a grill. Think about the fat notes of the grill and the bloody notes. The dryness of this wine together with its acidity are easily cleaned by the wine, so you can balance the richness of the meat with the elegance and the acidity of this wine. What again, I like it also on some cheeses, especially the aged ones.
I agree completely. I brought. I'll show you here. If I can turn my screen down. I brought smoked salmon and I made bacon wrapped scallops, and the smoky bacon plus the scallop is just fabulous with this rosé. And I'm very happy that my rosé has actually warmed up quite a bit while we've been talking, and I like it at a cool but not cold temperature. It's really gorgeous wine. And this also, as we say, natural extraction from the skins, low dosage. What a beautiful wine. Has anybody managed to match this up with any food? Did any of you out there bring food with you today to have with the wine? Anybody want to jump in on a pairing? Stephanie, you like my idea of the scallops? You have to unmute.
Sorry, yes, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, great.
Oh, how about some duck confit?
I'm sorry, Simone?
How about some duck confit?
Duck confit.
With the rosé.
Very French.
Yep. Well, the acidity of the wine with the fat of the confit, perfect.
Perfect.
I'm having salami.
Ah, brilliant.
And
well, Ricardo, that's your
some
favorite.
provolone cheese with some bread.
Oh, there's a provolone called Valpadana that is local to the Franciacorta area that is really good.
It's going very nicely.
Yeah, I brought
the rosé.
Dolce. I brought some Humboldt Fog goat cheese, some Harbison soft ripened cheese in cedar.
Wow.
And I brought some Taleggio.
Lynn, what's your address again?
Yes, but the best cheese.
That was my question. I'm in time for dinner. Can I get there for dinner?
Come on down.
It goes well with the rosemary ham that I'm having right now.
That's fabulous.
Garlic bread with a little bit of salami inside.
Oh, with the salami inside the bread.
Roll in, yeah, like a breadstick.
Okay, I will give you my address if you will give me yours, Henry.
Instead of to you, Lynn.
Yeah. Gualberto, tell me, when you're getting together with your friends and your generation, what kinds of foods do you have with Franciacorta wine?
I'm lucky because I've been used to drink Franciacorta almost with everything in my life. I mean, we're never missing a bottle of Franciacorta on our table, whatever we are eating. So people,
right?
And so I guess we try all of the good and worst kind of combination we can make with Franciacorta and food. But definitely with friends, it really depends by the period. But rosé is one of those wine which I start to drink a lot, and I drink a lot, especially in this period. Me and my friend, we are kind of a barbecue people, and the rosé shows us pretty well, especially if we need to start as an aperitivo together with our barbecue. It's always perfect to. It's like always a good combination. So rosé and barbecue is something that we like a lot.
Yes. I have to say, it manages a very unusual balancing act. Because to me, it's clearly, if you had this in a black glass and you had a blindfold on, you would still know this is a rosé, that it has a red wine character. It's not one of those hard to figure wines in that regard. It's very, very light and elegant. What do you guys think? Gina,
Well,
you're the chef. What do you like?
Well, I'm going to have to pour some more. I agree with the barbecue. I think it goes very well.
Yeah. I have here some gravlax.
Gravlax, perfect.
Gravlax too. Yum. Hey, who is the distributor of these wines in Florida, Lynn?
Funny you should ask.
Yes, I'd like to know.
Luigi is here. Luigi is the distributor.
Wonderful.
You want to jump in?
Come on, Luigi.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. What's the name of your company?
It works, finally. My company is called Vinaio Caprese. It's a combination of two words. I'm Vinaio, so I deal with wine, and I'm from the island of Capri.
One of my favorite places.
Yeah. So, when I started the company years ago, after I worked for Vinifera, which was one of the oldest orders of Italian wines, was a great school for me. Also, I put my on the wine, brands of people that I was passionate about, and nowadays I make decisions based on working with the greatness of the wines, the small production, also the greatness of the people behind the label, because I think in the market we associate certain wines with scores. We never ask who really makes the wine, or what are the people behind it, and why they do what they do, why they choose to be biodynamic or organic. Maybe some of them poison the wines, put a lot of chemicals in it, It's a broad conversation, Europe is very much, I think 20 years, ahead of the US market as far as sustainability in general, with the different levels, being biodynamic, Demeter, the highest, but 80% of my book is sustainable, with I would say a good 35% certified biodynamic Demeter, which is very important to me. At the end of the day, if I don't sell the wine, I have to drink it. So I want to make sure I don't poison myself.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Let's move to the next slide, at least, so we can have, I want to be sure we stay on time. We want to have Riccardo and Gualberto mention here that, Riccardo, you noted earlier some of the distinctions between Franciacorta and other wines. So here's a chart that shows your incredibly low yields. 12 tons per hectare is roughly 5 tons per acre, 4.5 tons per acre, as we would say in the US. And yet you also have a very low percentage of wine. So you're taking just the very finest wine, right?
Right. I think that you can focus on the number of bottles for an hectare. That's to say, more or less 3 acres, and you already have the answer. You see how different it is, the approach to the quality subject. We were, among the other names, probably the last one arriving on the scene, not because Franciacorta is young, but because Franciacorta started working on quality and working on its image later than other regions. We were producing sparkling wines since 5 centuries now, but the image of the region was really created in the last 30, 40 years of work. And the aim was always, let's try to do a little bit better. So we've been changing our rules many, many times. A few days ago, the Assembly of the Producers decided some more changes. So you can expect new rules for the next year. We are always following the aim let's do a little bit better while our experience is increasing. So in these numbers, you have a clear distinction about why Franciacorta is not an easy bottle to find. Gualberto mentioned that we only produce 18 million bottles a year, actually, so it's a small region. It will never get to the 100 millions of bottles of other appellations. And on the other side, we try to work with a lot of attention.
Well, let's go to the next slide then, Mariana. And we have here, Riccardo, this is you with your father, I take it?
Definitely. That's me with my father, Gualberto. Gualberto, that is one of my three sons. It's the oldest of my sons. It's getting the name of his grandfather. Well, this is a quick description of what we are. A lot of tradition and history together with culture. I would add also a lot of innovation. We do a lot of research in our estate, and some of the things we have been doing in the years are getting now in the daily work. The innovation we have been introducing in the years is now our daily work. We have a complete image of what is the Franciacorta world. So we have a wine museum where you can discover our roots. We have, of course, the cellar. So the visit is always starting from the museum, then going to the cellar, and finally getting to the tasting. But also we can host people in our agritourism, where we have flats for holidays. And my sister has an antique shop in the buildings of the estate. So it's a little old and new microcosmo.
It's beautiful. And as we saw earlier, a really gorgeous area. Let's move to the next slide here. And this is our chance to talk about sustainability. Gualberto, do you want to chime in about sustainability here?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, well, I don't know if anyone could see, but I was trying to show you that's the sign that you're gonna see on every of our label. I don't know if the one that you have right now on the market already has it, but it will come shortly in the next years on every of our label, which is the sustainable logo. This sustainable logo is very simple. It's a 3E. What are the 3E? Are the economical, environmental, and ethical pillar, which we certified for. This is what sustainability means today. It means, of course, taking care of the environment, which is, as I said before, a broad approach. It's not just the organic, but it's the biodiversity analysis of our soil. It's the carbon footprint certification. It's going to be the water footprint certification. So everything, the way we impact through the whole production, we always like to remember people that we follow the whole production process. We do own every of our vineyards. We don't buy grapes. We just use what comes from our vineyards. And we, of course, make directly the production in our cellar. So we are responsible for everything that goes through the process. And we are most of the time selling the wines on the market. So that is also, we are also impacting on the environment under that point of view. So we take care of everything about that. But there is also an economic pillar, which means, of course, that number have to the balance sheet need to work. So we need to make profit from what we do. Of course, that's part of the business, but it has to be ethical and sustainable also under that point of view. And then the last point, which is probably the most interesting and the most the one we are focusing the most in the last year, which is the ethical or social attention, or social sustainability. This is for us something which is in our culture, in our mentality, is the way we relate to every of our stakeholder, which can be internal or external stakeholder. But just to give an example, my father said we are a historical family with 18 generation of history. But this family for us is always larger than just the Ricci Curbastro family. We have 9 employees, and between these 9 employees, we still have people of the same family which are still working with us. We have 3rd, 4th generation of people of the same family still working together with us. So this is for us a great example of what we do in terms of ethical attention. And then, of course, there's a lot else of what we do related to the people which are outside. We do have, of course, the wine museum is something which is a way to tell the history and the culture. We do didactical farm school for the young children of the school, letting them discover the museum, how wine is made, but also letting them discover a vineyard in all of these different trees which grow in the vineyard and around the vineyard. So there is for us a lot of attention on this point, and we really focus on this argument in the last year.
Roberto, Jennifer is asking, and hi Jen, thank you for coming today. She's asking if that's an Italy or EU designation for sustainability, the Sustainable Winery Equalitas.
This is an Italian standard, which is recognized at the European level.
Okay, perfect. Let's go to the next slide.
I wanna you just give a look to the cover of our report. This is 2018. That's the 2017. As I mentioned, you can read them on our website. So they are, of course, public because they are published because we have been certified. So all the information about what we do and how we try to improve on our sustainability efforts, it's in our reports.
And I have
of course, we print very few of them. Most of them are downloadable on the website.
Your website is wonderful, by the way. Really informative, easy to navigate. And just a note for everyone that on the bottom of your tasting mat, but also on the bottom of this slide, you'll see some of the connecting links, and you've got social media handles on your tasting mat as well. So if you do post, and I hope you will from our tasting today, please use those. Let's go to the next slide because I'm very excited to show the range of wines. We've tasted 3, but there are more here, and even after this, there are 3 more wines in your museum series. So, Riccardo or Gualberto, you want to introduce your entire portfolio to us?
Go fast on this one, and then I will let my father explain the museum. This is our range of Franciacorta. We do produce 6 wine. Actually, today we've been quite lucky to taste 3 of them, which are definitely the most representative of our production, also in terms of quantity of bottle produced every year, which are the Brut, the Satin, which is always a vintage product, and Rosé. But we do also make an extra Brut, again, a vintage product, which is a drier dosage, of course, only about 3 grams of sugar per liter. We do have our Gualberto, that is the Reserva wine, which is dedicated to my grandfather. It's a Reserva style of Franciacorta, aging about 8 years in the bottle on lees. And we do produce also demi-sec style, which is something a little bit unusual today in Franciacorta, but which we still carry on, half dry, half sweet dosage. So something that goes about 30 grams, 35 grams of sugar per liter, which can be an interesting brunch wine, for example, an interesting Franciacorta for a nice brunch on Sunday.
Do you have to use a different base wine blend for the extra Brut or the demi-sec? It's not just
all of these wine, when they are they born since the beginning as a different wine. So we don't produce the wine thinking about the dosage. I mean, we think about we create a blend, and that blend is meant to become that dosage. It's something that comes natural. So to create our extra Brut, so making a wine, for example, with a low dosage, we always try to use, for example, more Pinot Noir than what happened in other wine. But let's talk about the Satin that we are tasting. To make our Satin is a decision that starts since the harvest, since the very beginning on the crops, the grapes that we choose to make that specific product.
Right.
Lynn, this is Michael. Quick question. Does Curbastro Vineyards do still wines as well?
Oh, they do. They do some amazing wines.
And do you have a list, or do you have, does Luigi, who is the distributor here, does he have a portfolio of all the Curbastro?
Right now, most of, let's say, the most representative labels are the Brut, the Rosé, and the Satin. I also have their
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
Your Curtefranca Rosso, which is, let's say, a wine that I personally love, of the still wines, and I also carry one of their museum release from the 2006 vintage, because I was fortunate last year to go visit Riccardo and Gualberto at the winery. And if you happen to be out there, to visit their wine museum is amazing, because they have like 250, 300 years of history of the winery, 18 generations of collecting all the tools that were used at the time in the area, as well as they have 500,000 bottles of storage. The cellar is amazing. I wish that I would carry more of their labels, but we tried with the entry-level Curtefranca in the past. They didn't do well for the market. We're gonna give it a second try, probably this upcoming season. Hopefully that things get better here in Florida, as unfortunately we are climbing the charts with this virus that is,
Right. And just a note that Stefano Campanini, who's with us also from Wine by the Bay, carries your wines. And so for retail, and I know, Michael, you'll be buying wholesale for your wine bar, but Stefano has them retail.
Well, you understand that we, by order of the Florida government, we're closed right now, right?
Yes.
Because
but I'm
of
still coming over.
And whenever it happens, we definitely are going to visit and order from Luigi, especially the Rosé Franciacorta. I mean, we have a lot of customers for that. But my question was actually a little different. In what other markets are you? Are you in New York? Are you in California? Can you give me a little bit more background of where you sell your products?
Yes, I can. Of course, starting from Florida going up, we are in Virginia, Maryland, and DC, then New York, then getting to Illinois, Kansas, Missouri, Colorado, California, hopefully very soon also in Washington. So we are actually...
We have Ohio and Pennsylvania too.
Ohio and Pennsylvania. Yes, thank you for the help. And let's say that what we are trying to do is to find small, passionate importers and distributors. For a small estate as Ricci Curbastro, we only produce 200,000 bottles a year. And for the appellation Franciacorta, it's very important to find someone like Luigi that is falling in love with the wine and is trying to convince other people that are restaurants and wine shops, that's our main market, that the quality that we show is something interesting for the market. So it's a sort of seeding work. Gualberto and I, we are coming to the USA at least 3-4 times a year, each one of us. Unfortunately, this year I will not get so many miles from the airlines because of the reduce of my ability of traveling. But I'm still, wishing to be able to be back to the States in the fall because apart from everything, traveling in the country, traveling on the market, it's a good way to learn for us. So every time we are able to pour a bottle, it's a good way to learn something about the market.
Yeah, Gualberto, why I asked is because, of course, we are in Florida, and we found out in our little wine bar we have that, of course, during the season, a lot of people ask for already wines or champagnes or Franciacortas, which they tried in their states. So it is our advantage then to carry your products if you are, for example, in the Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York markets, because that's where most of our, what we call snowbirds, are actually living. And we benefit from that.
we have on the screen right now the museum releases, and this would be something else. I'm not sure it works for a wine bar, Michael, but the museum releases are phenomenal for us consumers at home. Ricardo, you want to introduce us to the concept behind these?
Yes. When I'm talking about our wines, our Franciacorta, I always say that one of the ingredients of our wines is time. You have seen that we are aging our Franciacorta, regular, let's call them regular Franciacorta, longer than the requirements. So we do 3 years on the non-vintage, we do 4 years on the vintages one. We arrived to 10 years, 10 years with the Gualberto Dosaggio Zero. And finally, in the time, we decided that it was an option also to have some of these wines aging even longer. So the museum release are the same Brut, Extra Brut, and Satin, but they are aged longer than what is normal. We call them museum release, connecting two concepts. One is the museum, the idea of time, and the other one is the late release. So these bottles are aging longer on lees, and finally they are later degorged. So the museum release idea is to have complexity in the bottle with the longer aging time, is to have the opportunity of having on the same wine list, think about a restaurant, for example, but also on the shelf of a wine shop, the opportunity of having Franciacorta of different vintages. That makes the consumer, gives the consumer the opportunity of tasting different vintages, one together with the other one. That's normal when we talk about a Brunello di Montalcino or a Barolo. Why should it not be normal for a Franciacorta? Due to the fact that the Franciacorta can age with a lot of elegance and complexity.
Right. How long? I mean, in the cases of some wines, there's a feeling that if it's kept on the lees a very long time, once it's disgorged, it then ages very rapidly. Has your experience been with your museum releases that they also last a long time after they've been disgorged?
This is related with one of the innovation I was talking before. We do not use since 2000, so now it's over 20 years. At the degorgement, we don't use anymore sulfites, but we have been switching from sulfites to yeast extract that is self-produced in the cellar. So I use the yeast extract to protect the wines from oxidation. What's yeast extract? It's practically the content of the cells of yeast, of the same yeast of the fermentation. Yeast is containing a lot of amino acid. They are the base of life. You're all in Florida, so you know perfectly that what we are looking on Mars, actually it's water was found. The second thing we are looking for is at least one cell of one amino acid, because this will prove us that it's possible to live on that planet. So the research for life is the research of amino acid. The same happens in the wine. They act very well as an antioxidant. What we discovered later when we applied this technology, it was a much more longer life on the shelf after the degorgement, after being disgorged.
Brilliant. Well, I'm continuing my search.
Just wanted,
Roberto, yes.
Just wanted to add that we are very clear and bright on that. On every of our back label, you're always gonna find the disgorgement date of every of our Franciacorta. So also on the wine that you are tasting, you're always gonna find a month and a year when that bottle was disgorged. It's written in Italian. We write it as boccatura, that means disgorgement. But this is also an information that for us, there is no problem to show to the people, because we are not scared about the aging of our product on the lees and on the cork.
Brilliant.
Roberto, I'm here with your bottle of the museum release, the 2006, and the disgorgement was in June 2018. That is really so fabulous to see, and it's such a great testament of the quality that Franciacorta and you guys produce, because you are part of this flagship of Italian production in wine, which I love it so much.
Thank you, Stefano.
That's it.
Bravo, Stefano.
Brilliant. we wanted to just show you a quick picture of the other still wines that we're close to ending now. So just wanted you to know that these folks keep producing a lot of wine. So a good reason for us to keep on Luigi, right? about carrying wine. And then we all go to Franciacorta at some point. Do we have any questions for Riccardo and Gualberto at this stage before we close out? Anybody want to pipe in? Ricardo, Henry asks,
yes, about the liqueur.
Yes.
So our liqueur is really very simple, no secrets. I always say that it's nice to talk about secrets because the mystery, it's always catching the attention of people, but I prefer when I talk about my wines to be very open and very clear. So in terms of what we do, we use the same kind of wine, so the same blend to create our liqueur. Then is the sugar. For sugar, we use organic sugar cane. So again, no secret. I'm also making some experiences with some sugar made from grapes, again, organic one. I will tell you more in the next years. It takes time to make new experiences in our job. And finally, the antioxidant. The antioxidant, as I said, it was usually the sulfite, the sulfites. We have been switching from sulfites into yeast extract in the last 20 years.
Brilliant. Gina, anybody else have a question before we wrap up today? Oh, we had from Jasmine a question.
While you guys were talking, I was.
Are you?
What? We didn't hear you.
Gina, before we get to you for just.
I get to the different varieties. So talking about Franciacorta, we have 4 different grapes: Chardonnay, Pinot Bianco, Pinot Nero, and since the last vintage also the Herba Mate. That it's a local grape that was abandoned in the past time because of the high acidity, the long ripening season, that we have been rediscovering, thinking about the climate changes. So we did our first vintage with Herba Mate last year, 2019. Early to talk about it. You will find it in 1 or 2 of our blends in the next 4 or 5 years. So we will get back there. So there is always some innovation in Franciacorta to talk about. Talking about the Curte Franche, in the white, we have the Chardonnay, Pinot Bianco, and also Pinot Nero might be used, but of course as a white wine. In the red, we have the 4 Cabernet. So we have Carmener, father of Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Franc. By the way, Carmener is the Roman Vitis Piturica, so we grow it since 20 centuries now in the region.
I have a question.
Yes, Simone.
Yes. How do you plan to relaunch your marketing strategy after this whole worldwide business, not only in Florida, but worldwide?
You don't know that, but you are part of an experiment today. So
yes, we are. Yes, we are.
You've been used as for an experiment. So this might be one of the answers. But apart from the jokes, I think that we will have to talk more through the technology. But I still believe that, especially for wine, joining people, meeting people, talking in front of a glass of wine will remain necessary, because wine is part of our life. Wine is it's bringing a lot of emotions. So when we talk about wine, we don't only talk about a drink, we talk about emotions, and emotions can be shared only when we sit one in front of another one.
So you will rely on virtual emotions until the real ones take place.
I don't know, Simon. I'm having some real emotion right now. I have my glass of Satin here.
So do I, Lynn. So do I.
The best breakfast I ever had.
Yes. That is the highlight of my week, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So happy 4th of July with bubbles from Franciacorta.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Cheers to that. Salute.
Just also, our fearless boss in Italy would like to say a few words.
Oh, welcome.
That's
Marina,
nice.
are you there?
I am here. Sadly, we can't really see. Well, we can see one another, but we can't see one another as we would if we were all together in the same place. So, thank you, everybody, for participating in this very first World Wine Water Masterclass. Thank you, Riccardo and Curbastro, for this wonderful presentation, and thank you, everyone, for taking the time. I'm in Italy with the IEM team. The IEM team is in Florida, and this is how we do it now, I guess, for the time being. But we do miss the personal connection.
But Marina, let me tell you, even if you do not in the European Union accept Americans, we do accept Franciacorta wines. Yeah, definitely.
Very well said.
Well, they accepted me in the EU, so I'm sure they'll start accepting everybody else as well pretty soon. Hopefully, the numbers go down.
So
thank you so
we
much.
can enjoy wine this way. Yes, we have to.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And Roberto, Ricardo, thank you for taking time out of the day.
Lynn, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for the
You can buy the wines at Wine by the Bay if you want
Don't forget
some more.
Wine by the Bay and Stefano, who has them in stock, and I'm heading up there tomorrow, Stefano.
Yeah, you got it.
Lucky you.
Running over
Presentation, Lynn.
so much.
Thank you. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to us, and we'll make sure to send them to Ricardo.
Fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Yes.
Happy 4th of July with a nice glass of Franciacorta.
Okay,
Cheers.
Thank you much.
Cheers, cheers.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Hello, everybody.
Roberto, Ricardo, thank you again.
Thank you and cheers.
Thank you, Len.